Yo, what's going on, people? It's your boy Logic, and welcome back to yet another video. I wanted to make a quick care video when it comes to the peace lily plant because I had a comment from somebody, a member of the community, asking me to give just a basic care tips video regarding the peace lily, so here it is. So to begin, the peace lily is oftentimes on the list for some of the easiest houseplants to own and to take care of, and people always rave about the air filtering and air purifying qualities of the peace lily, and we always quote the NASA study that says that owning this houseplant is going to purify your space, is going to purify the air in your room of these toxins that are really bad for you. And to a large degree, these things are really true. This is a very rewarding plant and it's a very forgiving plant. However, I feel like people like to lump in plants like the peace lily and then the ZZ plants or the snake plants of the world and argue that these plants have very similar care patterns. However, that is actually not the case. While the peace lily, yes, it is a very easy plant to take care of and it's a very forgiving plant, it's definitely a little bit lower than, say, the ZZ plant, which is very hardy. You can throw a lot of neglect at the ZZ plant and it'll still be standing strong. The peace lily, while it is a very strong, resilient plant, is not quite at that level of fortitude. So you will often see this in the form of, when it comes to watering, if you forget to water your peace lily 1 or 2 days, you will see it dramatically droop. And it'll like look really dramatic, like it's putting on this big show, like, look at me, man, like I need water, I need care. And for the most part, it's telling the truth. It doesn't need water, it doesn't need care, because unlike the ZZ plant, it doesn't really go a long time being happy with the fact that you forgot to water it. It will forgive you for doing so, but it'll definitely let you know. And you generally don't want for it to droop so often, because that is a sign that you're not watering often enough. And what you may tend to see is that the tips of the leaves may become crisp, they may become brown. What I'm trying to say with all this is that you want to be on top of your peace lily, because yes, while it is a very forgiving plant, you don't want to push it into the corner and then like forget about it. It is a plant that you need to be checking in on, just like you should any plant. Even though the ZZ plant itself is a very forgiving, very hardy plant, you don't want to ignore it. Don't ever ignore your plants. Pay attention to them and understand that some plants, they're gonna go a little bit longer with neglect, but not all of them are going to be the same. And then speaking about drooping and water, when it comes to watering the peace lily, it's very simple. You're going to want to let it dry out. Now, you don't want the soil to dry out completely, because that's when you will get the dramatic drooping of the plant. However, you do want to let the first 1 to 2 inches of soil dry up in the pot. Now, I always advocate for the finger test, and when it comes to the peace lily, what you're gonna want to do is that you're going to want to dip your finger about 2 inches into the soil, and if it feels a little bit dry to the touch, it's definitely a good sign that it is time to water it. This plant likes to dry out a little bit between waterings, but not completely. Now, that is all to say that if you do dip your fingers 2 inches into the soil and it is moist, just give it 1 or 2 more days so the soil can actually dry out, because it is very important that you're not underwatering or overwatering this plant, because that's where a lot of issues with this plant ends up coming up for people. Underwatering and overwatering. All of that brings me into lighting for the plant, which is a big question. How much light should I be giving the plant? And my answer to that is always going to be low to medium indirect light. I like to place my peace lily more in the medium light, but the good thing about it is that it can tolerate the low light. However, if you do place it in low indirect light, one thing that you may notice is that the peace lily won't be flowering as much as it should. Instead, it'll continue to send out these really beautiful leaves, these shoots of leaves, but it won't be sending out the flowers as often, if at all, really. And for that reason, if you want for the plant to continue to send out flowers, it is a really good idea to keep it in the medium indirect light spectrum. Never go above that, because that's when you may begin to see scorching of the leaves, a little bit of crispiness. You don't want that. Now, with all that being said, I do want to say this. Just because you're not seeing these very beautiful flowers on your peace lily, it doesn't mean that you're doing bad. I feel like, in my opinion, as long as you are seeing leaves being shot up, that is a really important thing. This plant will not always be in the season to send out flowers, and that's not to say there's any particular season. It's not spring, it's not winter, it's really when the plant feels like it. It's really when the plant feels like it's in a good place to be sending out flowers. And so you may end up going a few periods, a few seasons without seeing a flower. It's perfectly fine. As long as you are seeing at least a little bit of growth when it comes to the leaves, that means you're taking good care of your plant. And taking good care of the plant means sticking to a very good watering regimen, and then making sure that the plant is receiving a sufficient amount of light, not too little, not too much. Now, speaking of flowers, a lot of people like to recommend using fertilizers to promote the growth of these flowers, or these new shoots that are producing these flowers. And I'm not an expert on fertilizers, but in my own experience, you guys remember that a few months ago, I had this giant peace lily. I'm gonna put some footage up on the screen right now, but I had a giant peace lily in my bedroom, and it was really beautiful, really luscious. And after a while, I stopped seeing the flowers, and this was before I was really understanding the chemistry and the biology behind the peace lily and the fact that it's not always going to flower. And so I bought this heavy chemical fertilizer, and I diluted it with water as much as I could, and I placed it into the pot, into the soil, and then I watered the entire plant so that it can kind of like distribute through the pot. And what I ended up noticing is that the leaves of the peace lily started to crisp up. It was starting to concern me, like, why am I seeing this crispiness if it's not even next to the sun? You know, it was doing so good prior. And then I come to find out through research that the peace lily is very, very sensitive to heavy fertilizers. What I mean to say with all of that is that if you are interested in fertilizing your peace lily, make sure that you are doing your research on what you are putting into your soil, as you should with any plant, to be honest. Now, when it comes to the peace lily, I really do think that that's all there is to it. I currently have my new peace lily, which I bought very recently, in an 8-inch terracotta pot, and it's been doing really well. I'm in love with this plant. It's amazing. But that is it for the video, guys. If you have any questions or comments about the peace lily, make sure that you do leave them down below. Put a thumbs up in the video if you enjoyed it, and if you're not subscribed already, I do welcome you to join the family. Until next time, guys, hope you enjoyed the video and hope you're staying safe. Peace.